in France on Friday. Not because of that, not even because of the fact that people in the Northwest and the Southwest are going to the polls again today in 4 divisions in the Northwest and 1 in the Southwest. That would have been something we could discuss on the program this midday, and the activities at the National Assembly, but because of the unprecedented disease, the coronavirus, or COVID-19 to be more precise. As of 10 o'clock this morning, we had 308,750 confirmed cases in all of the 5 continents of the world. Thus far, Italy in Europe has been the hardest hit with 53,578 cases with 4,825 deaths. Yesterday alone, 809 people died in Italy. And on the African continent, we have 1,200 confirmed cases with 35 deaths from 8 countries. Cameroon has recorded 40 cases with no death yet recorded in Cameroon. This is the reason why we have decided to devote this program entirely on it.
Post newspaper headlining, government locks down country as coronavirus cases multiply. But the interest of the Star is on Prime Minister Dion Gute's suspension of government ministers, other officials from foreign trips. Then Cameroon Tribune reports COVID-19 prevention, strict hygiene as solution, while the Green Reporter sees coronavirus posing a threat to climate action. The Voice says Africa loses billions due to COVID-19 impact. But the Guardian Post is worried about Parliament, which defies Biya's anti-coronavirus restrictions, as both houses of Parliament met in Yaoundé Friday before transmitting Public Health Minister's warning that bitter kola, garlic, do not cure COVID-19. Then comes the election of the Speaker of the National Assembly. The Post headlines as Parliament votes Bureau, Kavai abandons hospital beds targets to Yaoundé. The lone English daily The Guardian Post reports that Kavai ignores government self-quarantine prescription, shows up in Parliament less than 48 hours after arrival from France hit coronavirus. To breaking news Beleng, Kavai remains and will remain in power. To The Voice, on eve of National Assembly elections, incumbent Kavai resurrects. Then The Guardian Post reports that Kavai re-elected Speaker after all, just in time for MPs to receive their attributes as honorables on Cameroon Tribune and Insider. At a time, Elekam says it is ready for election rerun in Northwest-Southwest on The Guardian Post. Then envisages a peaceful electoral process in the Northwest and Southwest on the Post Weekender, where CPDM refutes allegations of selling parliamentary seats to SDF. Elekam then publishes list of polling stations on the Star. Cameroon Insider says voting takes place on Sunday. Then Camtel goes mobile on Cameroon Insider as government grants Camtel mobile telephony license at last on The Guardian Post. Military rescues teenage girls from suspected Amber fighters camp. The staunch, funky critic resigns, cites witch hunting as the old new dawn in PCC. And at a time, rural electrification projects crying for salvation on in-depth news. Rehabilitation works on Babaju Bamenda Road resumes on Cameroon Tribune. Let's now end our press review with this story on Cameroon Insider, where one of Cameroon's iconic rapper, Ndukong Godlove, better known as Jovi, has been nominated for the Best Rap category at the 256 Hip Hop Awards in Uganda. The New Bell music boss will be battling for the crown with some of the continent's best, like Nigeria's M.I. Abagi and Ghana's Sarkodie. Jovi, said to be highly appreciated in Uganda, was nominated after his album titled God Don't Cam. The 256 Hip Hop Awards, which takes place from the 3rd to the 6th of September 2020, is said to be one of the largest in Africa. Until I come your way again, this is your Hour with the Press.
We wish Jovi well as he goes for that prize. And I remember about close to a decade ago when the current director of CRTV asked me to look at that guy very well because his music was very appealing. That was when he produced his first album. And in the course of the program this midday, we're going to pay tribute to one of country music's best artists, Kenny Rogers. He died yesterday at 81. Now, let's have those who are on the set with me. We have an economist and financial expert, George Meka Abesolo. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe.
We have Dr. Eric Tandy. He's a public health expert. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe.
We have Eugene Fungwa. He is a media and development expert. You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Joe.
And we have Professor David Mba, a researcher and the Secretary General of the Cameroon Academy of Science. You're welcome.
Happy to be here with you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
I like to begin with you, Prof. Why did the disease, COVID or the coronavirus, seem to have taken the world by surprise?
Well, thank you, Joe. First of all, I'm not a professor.
Okay.
I am professionally a research scientist within the Ministry of Scientific Research and Innovation. And as you say, currently I'm the Executive Secretary of the Cameroon Academy of Sciences. Yes, the research world has been aware of emergent diseases. And so it is not a surprise that an emergent disease has just arrived. The problem is that they did not, or the scientific world did not, say that the next emergent disease would be COVID-19. But it appears, and maybe exactly how do emergent diseases appear from microbes like viruses. The nature of those small microscopic organisms is such that their genetic makeup changes very often depending on environmental circumstances.
Okay.
And so the COVID, the agent, COVID-19 causer, apparently belongs to a family of disease-causing viruses, but it's new in the sense that its genetic makeup within that family, within the new family, since the mutation occurred, is still being sought.
Okay, which means that scientists have not yet been able to put a finger on the causes and how it originated.
Well, exactly. While they may go to the environment and try to look at the environmental causes for the mutation, at the moment the thrust is on identifying the organism. Because once the organism is properly identified, its genetic makeup is known, the production of the vaccine can start.
Okay. Now, Dr. Eric Tandy, there are a lot of people who, scientists say, you people say, that this coronavirus has been around since 2002. Now, why has the scientific world not been able to produce a vaccine that can, I would say, destroy all of these little microorganisms that disturb the human or humanity?
Thank you very much, Joe. It's quite a very interesting question because when we talk of coronavirus, and especially COVID-19 being around since 2002, that means the contact with human actually began in 2002 with the SARS outbreak. With SARS, which is still another strain of viruses, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome. We should say in the family there are many. We equally have the MERS virus, which is Middle East respiratory syndrome. your question about why is it that scientists have not been able to come up with a vaccine to put an end to this, I will say, just like Prof said, there is mutation, and once we have genetic modification, that is where we have the re-emergence of certain. We actually came out, or scientists came out with a vaccine as far as SARS is concerned. But then with COVID, we have another genetic threat. So we're still trying to identify what strain is in the air as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Once that isolation will be done, and then we can get on the table and start talking about what kind of vaccine can come up, because we cannot generalize a vaccine because of environmental changes and because of genetic mutation.
The way you speak pushes me to ask this question. It looks like these series of viruses or the mutations are coming as a result of human interference with the original virus. Or there are so many hypotheses around that these might have been produced in a laboratory somewhere.
Not actually. We have what we call climate change and environmental changes. Nowadays, you see there is a lot of propagation in environmental changes and human activities within communities and interaction with different genetic organisms and even animals. You know, our activities within the general environment can cause a propagation of an existing bacteria within the environment. And this can spark up something that leads to researchers to start thinking and start doing some findings.
Okay. George, you wanted to say something in relation to this very fact that the human mind cannot put a hand on it, and thus the fact that it might be linked to human activity or so.
Well, there's a missing link, actually, in terms of identifying. And let me put it simply for people to understand where we are in terms of genetic modification. It can be high-level talks. A mother and a father, will have children. And you never know if between the father and the mother and the children's, the behavior will be the same. So every child has... So that genetic mutations or behavior mutations of viruses is what currently scientists are seeking. And definitely the world is changing. We are degrading the biodiversity of the environments. The climate is changing. It's more cold, hotter in some part of the world than we used to experiment. In the Cameroon today, we are cutting trees at a fast rate, even in city, to build houses and buildings. So we are changing. So that could be either manipulated or naturally transformed or mutated viruses.
Okay. Eugene, you might want to chip in something in that line.
No, I mean, they have said it all, but to re-emphasize the fact that we as a human species has become more involved in changing and influencing the way the environment operates. The level at which the human being has impacted the environment has been tremendous in the last couple of years, if you go back to Industrial Revolution. So it's no surprise, therefore, that we have these kinds of outbreaks. They have been very early unsubstantiated relation between the virus and bats. The science is still struggling to see if there is that connection, if it can be substantiated. But that's already an indication that how we change the environment could potentially bring us to a point where we create conditions under which new viruses can thrive. The other thing we need to know is that viruses that could live in other organisms and not cause a disease could become a cause of disease once they have moved into new organisms, including human beings. And this has been some of the early discussions about potentially where COVID-19 could have come from, going back to the wet market in Wuhan, where the very first case as compared to wildlife populations.
Okay. Prof, does that frighten the researcher to say we don't continue with research, or work on the environment to make it look what it used to be? And that's why people are talking so much about climate change and environmental changes. Does that worry you?
No. We do not appear to be giving enough to that. In fact, what we are, even when you look at us and our plants and the animals in our country, it is the environment of the region of the country that has determined what kind of organism lives there, what kind of human being lives there. The environment has fabricated all this over the centuries. So with the climate change that Dr. just mentioned, if we do not do anything to maintain a level under which we can live, we will be faced with the problem where we will have more emergent diseases like this. And when they come, the humans, the animals, the plants that will survive are the ones whose genetic makeup, which bodily biological endowment is made of, can change, can adapt, can mutate to enable them survive. Otherwise, they all die.
Okay.
So we have to give attention to our environment and the climate change thing that is coming. Climate change is going to affect us in many areas, many areas.
Okay, that sounds quite interesting. We'll have time to talk about that some other day. Let's concentrate on the COVID-19. Now, what's the situation in Cameroon like now? Which towns have been infected?
Thank you very much, Joe. Actually, for now, we've recorded cases in 3 of our 10 regions, namely in the West region, the center, and the littoral region. So they have been affected. However, the government measures that have been taken
to that. I just wanted, now, the Minister of Public Health indicated that the first 2 cases have been cured. Now, how do you declare a patient cured from a disease like this?
Thank you, Joe. You know, with the situation, once you've been diagnosed as being positive by producing the signs and symptoms of the COVID, and like I did mention, once these various signs and symptoms have been managed completely, and then a retest rerun on you, and you actually declared free from it, and then you are free to have an observation and return to your normal life.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like us to move, you know, that statistically speaking, so much has happened in the world since there was this outbreak of this coronavirus in China at the end of December last year. That in just 3 months, like I was saying earlier on, about 308,750 people have been infected by the virus, and Europe has been hard hit. And China, about 3 days ago, they said there wasn't any case in China, but today they declared 48 cases in China, with one being an indigenous, because the other 47 are said to have flown in from infected countries, but one home. But China has succeeded in almost trying to circumvent the situation. Europe has been hardest hit amongst all the continents, with Italy recording, like I said earlier on, 53,578 cases, with 4,825 deaths in Italy alone. The question which many people are asking is, why Italy? Even in China, where the disease broke out, we didn't have so many deaths. Why has Italy overpowered, or should I, yes, let me use the word overpowered, quote and unquote, China in terms of the number of deaths?
Thank you. It's a very pertinent question, Joe. I must say, there is what we call awareness and acceptance as far as a situation is concerned. In China, when it started, the population were mobilized and they accepted that something was going wrong. And when certain decisions were being made and transmitted by their government, the population adhered to it. They accept it. And other parts of the country or in the world, they maybe, perhaps, I don't want to overuse the word, I mean perhaps, might have questioned that maybe it's going to stay only in China, and the population start thinking that it might not be true. Like we've had some information in Cameroon that some people said is just a frame, it cannot be affected. I want to believe maybe in Europe, and especially in Italy, there was no enough population acceptance and prepared for the virus. And that might have caused the propagation, because the community did not think that this virus was quite tantamount as far as their economy or the day-to-day activity is concerned. So I don't want to blame their health system, because Italy has one of the well-organized health systems, but I think it's all about population discipline, community discipline.
And
which
that calls us to order.
Yeah, and I want to believe that we'll get to that as far as Cameroon is concerned.
Yes,
in order
we'll talk about
some
that
of this
shortly.
Information.
But a lot of people, a lot of countries, in fact, almost all countries in the 5 continents of the world have ordered a shutdown. And this lockdown is taking an economic toll. Now, let me begin by first saying, we give the priority here is to life and not the economy, right?
Yes, the priority is to life. To come back to China, I think they did a quick military-style lockdown of the city. Nobody entered, nobody came out. People did not continue their business as usual. So that, I believe, it was the first strongest responses they have that enabled them to contain the spread of the virus. Now, obviously, the first objectives is to save life. At what economic cost? Nobody can estimate. But when we do see how airports have been locked down, air borders have been locked, earth border have been locked. In Cameroon, stores had to close at
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Schools and universities are closed. So it impacts, first and foremost, the taxi drivers, the restaurants owners, the bars and the snacks. So it will trickle down to the sectors, beer, wine, juice sector will greatly be impacted. The transportation will be impacted because it came so fast. We don't know how much stocks is being left. We still import some of the entrants. So unless the government immediately take the Chinese style of locking down some key areas and taking controls of some import, production and distributions to maintain the prices very low. For example, I went to a pharmacy to try to get chloroquine. It was no longer available. And where it was available, the price went from 6,000 francs CFA to 20,000 francs CFA. So inflationary risks are very, very high. Some people obviously want to make business. And let's not forget, malaria is one of our major sickness here in Cameroon. And if malaria pills, which chloroquine is part of a component, are no longer available, we run a risk of people even dying faster. We already die of natural malaria, let's put that way. And corona has expanded to 40 cases today. So the risks are very high unless we take measure immediately.
Okay. Government is listening and government has taken measures. What about the global economy? Given that the lockdown is global, will that not be a mitigating circumstance almost across around the world?
It's already being estimated to be costing trillions of dollars. The most revenue transport line and the fastest is the access between Europe and the US. It has been shut down for 30 days. All the airline company on those roads are already asking for government compensations. The goods are no longer moving by air freight between those two continents. And in either continent, especially Europe's, people are not going to supermarket. In 1 week, they have emptied all the shelves of their major supermarket, which clearly indicates, and as the French government did, they allocated 300 billion euros in order to help company to compensate and, more importantly, to maintain a salary for people that are being locked down. So it's a massive, massive investment that is needed in order not just to maintain the economic level of people, but to stop any upcoming social unrest.
Now, will the economy be able to recover whenever the coronavirus has been declared over?
Yes, economies do recover. This is not the first major crisis that the world has ever known. The Ark of Noah was the only one that was still sailing around the world when the whole entire earth, according to the Bible, was inundated. So it recovered. It will.
Okay. And how fast can the world recover? Does economies like that of Cameroon need stimulating measures? And what type of stimulating measures?
We definitely need to do that. We are facing a crisis in far north, crisis southwest and northwest, and now this is a national health crisis. Either the government takes over some import, production, and distribution system, because I do not believe that if we keep the market high, a private company continue to control it, they will maintain their costs, while government can absorb some of the transaction costs in between productions. MIRAP was created in order to offset transportation costs between producers and buyers in cities. So government has to quickly ensure that we have enough stocks of rice, enough stock of flour that for bread, enough stocks of any oil that we are used to cook with. Otherwise, cooking arrow, you don't want to eat arrow leaves when they are raw. So we might run the risk of that. Okay. And then it will have to help producers that are working 24 hours in order to maintain a supply. Because right now, people are buying, so no longer moving, and inflationary expansion will go hard.
Okay. I saw you a little bit itchy there.
Yes, I did want to quickly say something in relation to those measures that to slow the spread of. If you mind, it takes me that we have sent out, especially with some of the measures that the government has taken, shutting down 4 p.m. In the mind of people, it's like everything is okay until 6 p.m. Limit number of people in a group to 50. It seems like within 50 you're fine. And that's exactly why many churches have decided to organize, because in their mind, the number they should watch in that we really need to find the social distancing. The idea that it's not about 50 people, it's not about 6 p.m., it's not about 4 p.m. It's that people should stay in isolation as much as possible. It's a communicable disease, which means that unless you come in contact with the virus, you're fine. We still have people moving across region. Douala and Yaoundé were clearly at risk because of the incoming flights. But the other regions of the country, if we had quickly stopped the movement of people within the region, we wouldn't have is that there tends to be a strong emphasis that gives the impression that those who are in the country are okay. understand that how we communicate, even if the information is accurate, could shape public of how this disease spreads and what they need to do to be placed.
Okay, that's very good. Care of that, and they certainly would modify some of this if need be. Yes, George.
Well, I just want to add, said that, well, the 13th commandment, let's call them that way.
What a newspaper put it that way.
Yes, of the government's crescendo. I do believe as the rapidness of cases that we move on a daily basis, today on a Sunday basis, we have 40 cases. I do believe additional measure will be taken. But one important thing is when dealing with the public that is prepared, you have to communicate and increase measure shortly and progressively for people to be aware, because it creates a shock, it creates a panic. The state comes in and rationate it.
Exactly.
And one more thing, and I think we are overestimating the ability of the public to be responsible and disciplined. There is no evidence, not in China, not in Italy, that people, no matter how well you communicate, that people are going to behave properly. Therefore, you need regulatory measures. Companies should be bold enough to ask their workers, like some have done, not to come to work and work from home. Supermarkets should be bold enough to limit how many people they admit into the supermarket at a given behavior. Don't count on people's good sense. Usually, they are not rational.
Oh. Thank you very much, George. I'm sure you will be leaving us shortly, but a report on the situation in Cameroon.
News from confinement centers this Saturday afternoon was rather Friday are relatively doing fine, sources say.
Are in a bad state. The others are moderately affected, not vital.
Authorities directly concerned with the management of the disease, however, fear more cases are on the way.
If we already have 27 cases today, there is bound to be more cases pretty soon. And we closely will not be surprised if the COVID-19 numbers reach 150.
A fortnight after the first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Cameroon, the figure to reach the 3-digit number, arrangements are made for more confinement space in hospitals.
We plan to increase bed capacities in all public concerns. We would extend to military hospitals and private clinics. Today in Yaoundé alone, we have been able to come up with about 150 beds.
Presently, the disease is still in the containment phase, and the population is seen as the principal actors in stopping its spread. Health authorities say people have not shown any responsible behavior. They visit crowded places, attend funerals, wear measures to encourage social distancing.
Judge has left us, but we are still on set. Dr. Eric Tandy, it looks like accepting the reality is a key factor in tackling the problem.
That's very correct. You know, some of the challenges each and every country has as far as policies and information dissemination is concerned is acceptance. And that is why after the ministry or the Minister of Public Health actually sent out a communique last week saying by giving or asking those who are coming in to respect 14 days self-quarantine before was setting like an alert. And we were expecting, or the minister was expecting, that these individuals will be mature enough and to be well disciplined. But yet, questions keep coming in now that, are we sure these individuals have accepted that the virus even exists? And from the information we're getting from the community and social media, which I would like to call on the population to be very careful that the disease is real and the threat is there. And that is why we've seen from statistics a lot of people that have died from it. And then now, with the government measures that have put in place and still in alliance with the Ministry of Public Health to quarantine all those who have come in, and we keep recording cases, it's no longer an issue of black skin or white skin. It's now an issue of a global concern. We have to believe, we have to understand that there is no restriction, there is no bias as far as the virus is concerned. It touches everyone. And self-discipline is what we need to put in place. Once information is passed, the government has taken a series of measures. But now the population have to respect all the decisions that have been put in place by the government. The government has taken its own responsibility to put in these regulations. Just in line with what Eugene said, you know, if we said 50 persons have been restricted in a church, and one of the measures is that we have to respect a minimum of 1 meter. That is a question. This morning, boarding a taxi to town, and the taxi was able to even inform, just an example, that I am no longer going to take another passenger because we have to respect what the government has said. And the person just turned and said, no. Do you think all what the government is saying is right? This is all a way of trying to make out their money. This is the kind of information which the population needs to know, that we are in a crisis situation. We are in a situation that leads to threat of human life. And we've seen a lot of our brothers overseas dying from it. We need to take it serious. We need to take all information as far as the virus is concerned very serious and respect all preventive measures. Self-discipline is what is very important. The government cannot move behind everyone to tell you when you get to the market square, do not hug, do not greet with your hand, you know. You have to respect a perimeter from your position. Now we have cases propagating.
Exactly.
What next?
And that's it. The director of the Yaoundé Central Hospital said we have 2 serious cases of the 40 that have been declared in Cameroon. 2 have been treated, but like doctor was saying, there are people who say that it doesn't affect black people. The vice president of the Burkina Faso parliament died from the disease. 1 black in Sudan as well, Mauritius Island, and Ghana died from the disease. And on the African continent, we have as many as 35 people have died from the disease. We have 10 in Egypt, 15 in Algeria, 3 in Morocco, and 1 in Tunisia. So it's real. Now, you were just talking there about information and misinformation, but the social media seem to be playing a very key role in trying to vehiculate this information, part of which might be erroneous.
Yes. Let me start with something else, which is that of miscommunication, which I started touching on the fact that you give out signals that could cause behavior that is not adequate to deal with the problem. And if you remember quite well, and coming back to the issue of black people are not affected, even scientists globally had raised the question quite early, why is this not as rampant in Africa as would have expected? Again, those are problems of miscommunication. When you are in a crisis situation, whatever you say is interpreted and behavior is built around that. Fighting it becomes more difficult once misinformation has gone out. Fighting it becomes more difficult because people generally are more likely to accept information that confirms their own biases. So once people confirm their own biases and go back to the idea that could it be that this was fabricated? Could it be that the government, we've heard that governments in Africa are lying about because they want the World Bank to give them money. People tend to believe that kind of information. Now, coming back to social media, the main threat, as far as social media is concerned, is not even the misinformation that's happening on social media. It's the idea that people have become agents of the reproduction and the replication of misinformation. So even if you had 2-3 pieces, I've been on forums of very responsible people. Most of the claims about remedies, garlic, bitter kola, most of the claims about prophets who are declaring the pandemic over, most of the claims, it's social media. And again, it goes to, because we have biases, we believe in our prophets when they tell you that, oh, by the 27th, we're going to get out of this the way we got into it. People are going to behave based on that information. It's more than ever that especially religious leaders become more responsible and understanding that we're not going to prophesy ourselves out of this. We're going to pray, fine, I'm praying about this every day, but we're not going to prophesy ourselves out of this. And Christians, I'm a Christian, I'm a very dedicated Christian. I do realize that there are things that you can pray away. Just clean your hands and stay away from others. And this thing will pass you. We have all the information that we need to be able to stop the spread of this disease, and not get sick anymore, and save the lives of people. We do not need a miracle.
The one good thing about the disease is that it is not airborne. Now, Prof, Doctor, have these herbs and concoctions, bitter kolas and all whatnot, have you people tried to look into that at the level of research? I see you smile.
No, with respect to coronavirus.
Okay.
Our research system is usually such that attempts to address the problems that are known to be available in the country.
Okay.
Not some kind of futuristic one that you do not know what you are working on. But bitter kola and the rest have been associated with other things, but not
the coronavirus.
This. Yes. So with the social media and kind of information, the truth is that we have to be very inquisitive. When the information comes, we must ask, what is your source? One source came saying that giving all the characters, like the pH values of the coronavirus disease and the related organism, published in 1991. We said 1991 was, this is something that is just coming in 2020. Why was this? So that one was purely false. It is fake. We should be careful with that.
Now,
and then now,
let him finish.
About black resistance or African resistance to it. The truth is that no study has been done yet. No scientific study
has been done yet.
Yes.
Okay. Now, should patients try self-medication? Self-medication if you have fever or you find yourself in a place where you don't have a medical institution?
Very dangerous dangerous practice. Auto-medication, as we call it, is very dangerous because you don't know what might have been the cause for you to have the increase in temperature. It's always very good. Or cough, fever, or whatever thing. Away even from COVID-19, auto-medication is discouraged at all levels in life because you might be thinking that something you are suffering from is what you are going to take will be a remedy to it, but meanwhile you're causing more damage. So at all levels,
discourage that. Now, what about the fact that it's being said on the social media, on the real traditional media, that chloroquine has been found to provide some remedy?
Thank you very much, Joe. It's good. We should be very clear here. I want to take the word chloroquine or any medication as far as corona or COVID COVID-19 is concerned, and as well as vaccine. There is a series of procedure to follow, which is defined by WHO. There is, after the conception of a medication, there's what we call clinical trial. There's what, it takes procedure. All these characteristics and criteria must be respected before coming up with a declaration. And this declaration has not been made by the WHO. So it is too early for us to start drawing conclusions based on social media. Although we know social media do help in propagation of certain information, but negative information, I want to believe that it goes a little bit faster, just like Eugene did mention
earlier on. Yes.
I just wanted to say, again, I'm very keen about the information we set out. I think, in my view, is that the public should not bother about the treatment protocols and procedures. The information the public needs to know is if you have symptoms, isolate yourself and call for medical help.
Yes.
That's the information.
1510.
That's the information the public should be concerned about. Yes. Leave the cure, leave the medication.
Any fever, any cough, yes, as of now.
Isolate yourself from your family, get into your bedroom, lock yourself up, pick up your cell phone and call for medical assistance.
Yes.
Okay. That's the information everyone
Thank you so
should
much.
have. If you forget everything, don't forget this one.
Okay. We have Elvis with us, and we've been this program is being streamed live.
Yes,
reactions online.
Yeah, quite a good number of them. Larissa Ambe is asking what happened, that some passengers of the Air France plane were not quarantined in Yaoundé and Douala. And François Billet is asking in French où sont les ONG pour apprécier l'action du gouvernement. Mary Kilachin said this virus is a big challenge. For me, I see it as a big discipline plague. The world has turned upside down, and it's normal to happen, a sort of return punishment, but all will come to pass soon. Akong Foba Livinus says it is said that the virus was first noticed in 2002, and how then was it treated that today it is ravaging the world over. Panso Pekin says too much technology. China needs to be penalized for hiding the coronavirus for a long time. And Asong Paul says cities like Douala and Chang need serious implementation of the government's restrictive measures. And Yu Roland says China is unaware, or China was taken unaware, but they put in place serious challenges, though 400 people died in Wuhan city. While Edwin Chumbentin Ngang says military lockdown is effective strategy to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
Okay. I would like that we end there. Elvis, thank you so much for joining us on the program this midday. Now, let's talk about the do's and don'ts now, before we pay tribute to Kenny Rogers.
Thank you. I think the Ministry of Public Health of the country has designed a series of measures that fall in line with the preventive, like the do and not or don't do measures are concerned. Firstly, we talk of
the attitude. I would like us to talk so much about, or to concentrate on the attitude of Cameroonians towards these measures, some of which Eugene did make mention earlier on.
Very good. I think the population have to believe, in the first place, that the virus is real and the threat is there. And they should follow up all preventive measures that are already being propagated in our communities. And in case of anything, they should not forget to call 1510, which is the hotline that gets directly medical help at any point, at any position you find yourself within the country.
Okay. Eugene?
I think that the key phrase is social distancing. Whatever you do, whether you're in a bar, whether you're in church, whether you're where, the key phrase is social distancing. If you're too close for comfort, you're at risk. It doesn't, the government measures are just minimum standards for us. We need to raise personal standards at home, wherever we find ourselves. The other thing is that we also need to remember that the right information is also going to be key in how we behave. Let's know that, for example, Italy has been cited quite a bit. Remember, Italy is an outlier. The rate at which people die from the disease is not as high as we're hearing when we listen to the figures. So the chances of surviving by making yourself available to the health system are very high. So when you run away from the health system, that's when you increase your chances of dying. I think it's about under 20% mortality rate. It's less than 5% mortality
globally.
Globally. This is good news, and we should know that it's not a fatality. Go to a hospital; they're going to give you a treatment that's available.
What the medical people call the symptomatic treatment of the disease. Okay, Prof, your own advice to...
Yes, about the do's and the don'ts. I think the 13 points that
government has taken,
been established, need to be explained. I think that is where the Italians might have failed. It is not the science that Italy needs. It is probably the socio-cultural interaction of the people that has led to the situation there. For us not to be, the 13 points should be explained at the level of the media, so that when you close the bars at 6 o'clock or this or that at that time, go away because this. We should not just leave it blank because, as you say, you don't have confidence in everybody in the public to understand everything the way it should be done. Now, another aspect that is further away, like the do's, the tests, and I think the doctor has talked about the tests that must take place in our
the infrared camera.
Yes, I mean, apart from that,
or thermometer,
at the level of the ports of entry and so forth. Once a case is suspected, what facilities exist for the testing? The truth is that in the country here, we have Santa Pasteur, which is a partner, and then we have the National Veterinary Laboratory in Garoua that can do a number of things. Then there is the Biotechnology Center lab, I think called Besson, and the Biotechnology Unit Lab at the University of Boya.
Okay.
These last two have just recently been reinforced in equipment. But the human resources, and I think a lot of our virologists, our leading virologists are not in the country.
Joe, maybe.
Okay. You wanted to chip in something?
Just to add to what Prof says, you know, there is a lot of misinterpretation of information. As far as you have some symptoms like the cold or whatever, until your sample have been collected and tested positive, you cannot say that I am COVID-19.
Okay,
that is the information the public should know.
Okay.
So you don't have to panic. When you have headache, fever, or cold, just simply call 1510, and then they will come to your rescue. And
we'll
it is
see whether,
only
see whether it's
the test,
the normal cough and catarrh that we usually have, or it's something else.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, the world yesterday lost one of its greatest singers, American-born Kenny Rogers, died at 81. He was a songwriter and singer, actor. Kenny Rogers was born in 1938 in Houston, Texas, and was a specialist in country music. And so many people, the world, have been reacting to his death. And he was a vocalist and played the bass guitar and sang with so many other artists. We chose one of his outstanding pieces to pay him tribute on CRTV today. And this is the one which he sang sang that song. It's originally Kenny Rogers' music, but she sang it with Dolly Parton in 1985. That's the 1985 edition. And with that, we conclude this edition of the program. Next week, we'll certainly go back to our politics and other societal happenings. But today, we decided to hem in on COVID-19, which is a pandemic that has gripped the world. All the 5 continents have been touched. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Stay on with CRTV if you can. Have a nice day right ahead.